Welcome back to Cheche, the program where opinion counts on Citizen TV. About 500 NGOs or PBOs were deregistered last December for failing to submit the financial returns. There's a proposal to limit foreign funding of PBOs to about 15%. All this lends itself to a perceived government clampdown on PBOs. But is that the case? Well, today's guests are Sophia Abdi Noor, the chair of the task force appointed to seek public views on the PBO Act, and Wilson Kipkazi, the chair of the NGO Council. We've talked quite a bit about where we are and how we've come to where we are, concerning the PBO Act. But let's get to the basics, and probably what I should have asked you in the first place. What is the role of PBOs, of civil society, of NGOs? Sophia?
The role of civil society is to supplement government efforts, particularly where there are no services that reach the public, and where there are gaps. Then the civil society organization come in to help, and when they're helping to deliver some services that is not accessible to the people.
But is that all they do? Sometimes NGOs do what the government does not want. Say, for instance, I remember at one time when Maina K used to be in the Kenya National Human Rights Commission, he asked the then head of civil service, I want you to give me the list of all the vehicles that the government people use because of misuse of government vehicles. Of course, they didn't get, they were ignored. Last election, I think last or the other election, an NGO called Africa went looking at how during the campaigns, and they took pictures of people, politicians who were in government, how they were misusing government vehicles. So really, it's not about supplement. Yeah. Sometimes they ask governance, proper governance, so they come into conflict with government.
Yeah, I was going ahead, and it's not, that's one of it. The other one is to become a voice of the voiceless. For example, when I was starting the organization called Womankind, and we had many historical injustices that were taking place in the northern Kenya. One of it being the law of saying that movement is restricted, assembly is restricted, freedom was restricted. Those are some of the issues. And in 2005, I want to give you an example. When we did the referendum on our constitution, and we moved very strongly as a region, and we fought very hard that the no wins in the referendum. 2005. Yeah. Immediately after 2005, and the politicians who were threatened then in my region, all of them came to the national government, and they told them that there's an organization that is a national threat to the security of this country. I was summoned as a person in front of the National Security Council here in Nairobi. When I came, I was told you are a threat, and I said, okay, if I'm a threat, please give me evidence. Go and do your investigation. We do not want politicians to come and influence you. So they felt it was wise for them to do that. They went out, they did their own research, they did their own they collected information, and when they came out, when they came back to Nairobi, they in fact, we were given respect in the government, and the government said they want to work even with Womankind because of the kind of activities that we were doing on ground.
This brings us back to the point you were making, Mr. Kipkazi, before the break, about the fact that the security proposals within the PBO Act were restraining, given that anyone who is unhappy with the work you're doing could label you a threat and have your activities shut down. Yeah. But coming back to the point that Mutegi is making, particularly about governments, at the moment there's a perception that there's a clampdown on NGOs, and that has to do with governance, NGOs working in governance. You talked about Africa. This is the same organization that led the petition against the results of the election in 2013. Is it your sense, A, that there is a clampdown on NGOs, on PBOs?
As of now, the perception is there, but in reality, I don't think. Because we've had good relationship with government, and if there are a few individuals, of course, which have been targeted from the previous election, and those are organizations that are in governance and human rights. You know, we also work on human rights issues, we work on land, and many other issues across the board. And basically, what we also target is about issues of policy. We influence policy at the grassroots because government would want to make policies that favors the government of the day. But us as NGOs and civil society at large, we will want to see policies that are for posterity, irrespective of which government comes in place. And therefore, this essence of the government of the day wants to prepare themselves to stay in power longer is where we come into disagreement. Because many times they tramp on the rights of the citizens and ended up violating, the way you have said.
The same rights?
Yes, the same rights. And therefore, what we are doing as civil society, as NGOs, as PBOs, is to make sure that we educate the citizens of their rights. We also challenge where the laws are not favorable because we have international laws, the protocols that government sign and the like. Those are the things, and many of them the government have signed and put them under shelves. And these are the things we are bringing out as NGOs to make sure that these agreements that have been signed are made into law, the way the Constitution of Kenya says, like, if you have an international protocol that you've signed, you must domesticate it. So this is where we come into clash, because once some of them are domesticated, it infringes on the rights of the politicians, and this is where the war starts.
Rights or the space of politicians, because there's a perception, since we're talking about perceptions, that some of some NGOs exist to disturb the government. Those words have been attributed, I think, to yourself. When you first came in, to say that you would make sure that NGOs do not disturb the government.
I was actually written a letter, warning letter by government agency,
saying
that I should not challenge what the government of the day is doing. That's where we disagree.
Isn't there?
Sorry, when did you get that letter?
That was in November. Yeah, November.
Last November.
Yes.
So and then you say, with your own mouth, that the government is not clamping down on NGOs, and you got such kind of a letter.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, you see, most of the things are done by politicians, but the real government people, we are talking of the people working in government like PSS, CSS, we have no problem with them. But the real person that we have problem is a politician.
Who sent you that letter? Who was it signed by?
Who was the author of the letter?
It was authored by the NGO board.
NGO board? So the NGO coordination board?
The chair of the board. The chair is an appointee of the politicians.
At what point, do you know why you got the letter? Was there something, a reaction?
When I was challenging the government on the 15% issue, and I said I was going to mobilize NGOs to demonstrate against it. And they came out clearly saying that I should not challenge what the government have done. Whatever the government wants done in the act will be implemented.
Okay. And the amendment to the act relates to classification of NGOs. The amendment, proposed amendment under the Security Laws Amendment Bill or Act that was passed requires classification of NGOs into certain cadres. And you're saying there was an attempt to interfere with the operation of NGOs. What is the classification about, and is it legitimate, or did you have any problem with that?
If I may come in there, even if you go to the NGO Coordination Board, even now, there are clarifications. When you are filling the forms of registration, you will ask, what do you want to do? Yeah. And those clarifications are there. So when even the NGO Coordination Board...
It's not clarification as such, classification. That there is classification of NGOs. Yes. That's what the law requires. What is the classification about?
It's not necessarily different.
It is not different. Let me tell you. When you go to the NGO and you want to register an NGO, even now, because the PBO Act is not on board, you go there, you will be given a form. And you will be told, where do you want to operate? First, give us the region where you want to operate. Second, give us the area. Is it health? Is it water? Is it governance? They are there, even now. And if when they come and they're doing their monitoring, they will come with that. Right. And if they see you are going out of your mandate, what you have registered, that is where you get a problem with the NGO Coordination Board, even now. So that's clarification that I want to make.
Right.
Yes.
But I have a different view there. One, more to it, you see, in when you like, for example, I'm doing water, and my NGO is dealing with issues of border. The moment it comes to issues of policy, they want to lock you out from there. That's where we have issues. Yes. Because they don't want you to talk on issues of policy. You don't want you to demonstrate to say this is not acceptable on issues of policies that really infringes on the rights of the
pretty much you're telling us that you're allowed to dig wells, but you're not allowed to go and lobby for a law that says
exactly. That's what they want
that wells must go
how
no
they want
further.
To
yes.
classify us.
I just want to disagree with him because I've been in the NGO sector, and when we were doing the children's law, we were there in particular and we influenced. When it came to the lands law, we were there and we have an NGO that is spearheading the advocacy on land and influencing the policy, and we were given space to come on board. When it came on even the constitution, bombers, there were delegates from the NGO sector who were allowed and they were given the chance. I was a person who was representing the NGOs in the bombers delegate conference, and we were given that chance. If NGOs were given chance to participate in the highest, the supremest law of this country, then I think Kipkazi must tell us the truth on that. I always know that there is a space when there is some policy going on, and now the constitution demands.
Is there space for certain issues?
Yes.
And that certain issues are seen as taboo?
Yes. He's talking of water, and I can tell you that
he gave us an example of water.
Yes.
Water policy.
I'm also giving you examples of what the NGOs are participated.
But the question I'm asking you, Ms. Noor, is there space for certain issues that are deemed benign and not counter to national,
water, child care?
Yes.
But when you come to governance and human rights,
even water policies, you might find
even now environmental, there are issues there.
So given that we found oil and people are mining, and there might be certain interests, people who have
which means, you see, because the amendment, if I may read it for you, says that the authority, upon consultation with the cabinet secretary, may from time to time review the classification of public benefit organizations. Now, what is that reviewing from time to time? That you can be confined to a particular whatever, and if you extend a little, or your mandate then begins to morph into another, you are moved and barred from participating in an activity that is determined by another authority to be external to your mandate. That's really perhaps where the contention is.
The contention is because why should that issue of
classification
and then be reviewed? At what stage do you want to review every time? What I wanted to say on that also is they have given a lot of powers to the CS, which we think as NGOs does not deserve at that level in terms of security issues.
Yes.
Because somebody can wake up the next day and say, we think you are not in the right, you are not.
That's none of your business.
Yes, none of your business, and you are completely frozen. And this is where we thought as NGOs, as civil society organization, giving charity to the society and complementing what the government does, we should also be given leeway to be able to exercise our freedom of interaction, freedom of engagement, and be able to do what we think is right for this country. And
but those freedoms that are enshrined in the Constitution are also limited. And isn't that the problem?
It comes to responsibilities.
Yes, responsibility, rights and responsibilities.
Yeah.
Isn't that the problem? Because going back to the discussion we had during the last break, Mutegi, you asked a specific question. Do NGOs have the right to question election results, to take the government to court, to provide evidence? In the case of, say the ICC, in the case of perceived or alleged gross human rights violations.
Yeah, I think as NGOs, we are supposed to intervene on behalf of the citizens because most of the time we are organized institutions. And the citizens may have their views, but they may not be challenged as individuals. So we come in as institutions that represents the small man at the grassroots to be able to question and challenge. Now, when it comes to issues of the ICC, of course, we all agree there was human rights violations. We all agree. And the only thing we could do as NGOs at that moment was to probably document and on issues given by citizens. I think that's what the human rights, those organizations did. And there was also a government body that went round to find out. It was it's called the one that was the Wagi Commission. They also brought a report. And what we are saying, if there was something which happened, of course, should be verified beyond reasonable doubt at all levels. And I think I don't want to talk now about the ICC because it is in court. And there are people who are handling
the perception among Kenyans today is that this government is kind of getting scary of not only NGOs, but the press, civil society, the church. We are going back to where we used to be with Moi in 1990s. Reason that business of trying to curtail and muzzle. Is that, do you feel that, Mama?
For me, definitely there are issues, as people are raising all over the issues. And the issues which are there are issues that, you know, government is saying, yes, you have the freedom, you can say anything you have, but you must take responsibility of whatsoever you raise as an issue. And even the Constitution tells us, yes, you have the freedom, but there are limitations to those freedoms, particularly when it comes to national security. And when it comes to national security, a person who comes from the region I come from, who have suffered a great deal, I do not want to take it lightly. I want to be very, very firm on security issues when it comes to security issues.
Ms. Noor, you're not quite answering the question. The limitations include the, you know, curbing, you know, fomenting of dissent, of, you know, insightful speech, hate speech, ethnic hatred, divisive talk. The question that's being asked here is, in the instance of, we've talked about human rights violations, in the instance of perceived government misconduct, is it right, is it proper, is it ethical for an NGO to step in and attempt to hold the government to account?
And NGOs have the space to ask the government to account. Not only NGOs, even an individual Kenyan has a right to ask the government to account. Even an individual. Anyone who feels that there are issues that they want. That's why we have clauses in the Constitution that even if you are a member of parliament, you are not certified the way they are doing. There's the recall clause. There are many, you know, methods that we can use in order to ask the government to account to the citizen of this nation.
Then
look at what happened in Narok yesterday or the other day. Here are people who say we want to take this document to the governor. And we're not going there with guns. We're just walking there, giving this document. Then the president say, you guys go and negotiate. Don't do demonstrations, just negotiate. The minister comes and says, oh, you know, that demonstration will not take place. Now, the Constitution says people can demonstrate. So what they do is tell the police we are going to have a demonstration. The fellows were beaten to kill. What is that?
Well, to me, and to the word going around the country now is there are fears that the government wants to
clamp down.
Probably not NGOs alone. They want to control the space for divergent voice. They want to make sure that they control, monitor, and see who says what and how will it impact on us and the likes. And why they start perception is because, one, they started with the media bill, which is still going on, issues of going on in the media. It came to NGOs, where they wanted to clamp us to say if you are receiving less than 15%, more than 15% of funding, should be declared as a foreign agent, whereas the government budget receives about 30% from donor funding. So I think the government also should be registered as a foreign agent. The other thing is about the same thing is about the charges now. The charges, they are renew and cry now, saying they have introduced regulations. We don't refuse regulation. But the worst part of it is they are saying they were not involved. Somebody comes with a bill, an individual member comes with a bill, takes to parliament, amended there, it doesn't go to to public. I am happy now that the BBO is going around the country. Previously, we were not amused because it never had such a forum. And you know, most of these bills, even if it's private, should be subjected to public participation. And I think the law is very clear about that. Now, the judges are now saying the government wants to control the
But that's because
the
of
religion.
real pastors. People calling you, telling you to come in and pray for a miracle. And so it seems as if to a certain extent the government is damned whichever way they do anything. We complain about security.
But if there is one rogue pastor, you don't clamp down on the judge.
Right. All the judges. And one of it all, in the first place, these judges went through a process to be registered. They through the government. They didn't wake up one day and form the church. So in their process of registering, there must also be some administrative caps. The other thing is about what I said, monitoring. Government has not been monitoring anything, including the development agenda in this country. They don't monitor even the churches to see what they are doing. In terms of even visiting and hearing from the pastor what they do, and even going to the church and listen and record and bring a report. So what is their work? If these people who are registering just register and they stay in office. So what we are saying is government must also be able to monitor everything, including development projects that they undertake in this country, so that we can be able to see what I'm doing in good faith, not with only when the things bad happen, they come in running and shouting.
Okay. We have to take another break now. This is Cheche. We're live on Citizen TV. We'll be back after this break.